to the MMA Roadshow, episode number 269. Giggity. My name is John Morgan.
I would have never even just picked it up and laughed until you said something about it.
Yeah, come on.
I would have missed an opportunity.
You see?
I would have missed an opportunity.
I got that. Cold coffee is with me, as you can hear.
Yes, none of that hot tea bullshit.
None of that hot tea, man. Get that hot tea out of here. No, shout out. Look, first time we've been together, it took a while. I had to go back and look. April 30th was the last time it was 3 weeks ago. April 30th. Wow. So I haven't even done a show this month, but yeah, crazy. And shout out to Hot Tea, Oscar Willis, man.
Yes, he was awesome. Thank you, Oscar.
He did 5 podcasts with me over the course of 11 days in Jacksonville. So we did 2 of the full shows, and then we did 3 of the bonus shows over on Patreon.com. The and a half episodes and the and three quarters. It doesn't flow quite as well, man.
It's still better than whatever. It's so funny when we were trying to. You hit me up and you're like, what are we going to name this thing? And at first I was just like, that's stupid, John. It's going to be the next number. And I was like, oh, wait, it's another and a half. But it isn't.
It was. I was like, this is kind of a stupid question, but it's a serious question. I was like, I don't even know what to call this thing.
Have we ever? Because we've never ran into that before.
I feel
almost like we probably did over the 20 years that we've been doing this show.
269 straight weeks without missing. We have never missed a single episode.
Crazy.
Come vacations, come sickness, come furloughs, come global pandemic. We have not missed 269 straight weeks. So, but yeah, I want shout out to Oscar because he did 5 episodes with me. So if you want to hear some of the ones over on the Patreon, the post-fight shows that we're doing at 4 o'clock in the morning.
So where did the hot tea? Did you call him hot tea? Or
no, he just came up with that. Yeah, he rolled with it. He came up with that.
I thought that hot girl on internet that was calling for hot tea and calling for my dismissal. It's so funny. He reached out to me. He's like, bro. He was like, it's funny because I forget, Holly Beck, I think. Shout out to Holly if you're actually listening to this. I mean, I know hot tea's not on this episode, but if you're still listening, she had put something. I saw it on the Twitter. The hot tea and cold coffee, and they had the picture of the Shining when he's out in the. I love that movie.
Yep.
That was like one of the best scenes right there. He had reached out after it. He's like, "Hope you're well, bro." I was like, "Oh, he's feeling guilty because somebody's like calling for my dismissal or something." But yeah, no, I was so thankful that Oscar stepped in. Oscar's always great. I mean, we love having him. Oscar's probably one of my favorite other media people.
I agree.
Even though he works for just a piss poor outlet, but I'm just kidding. But no, it was really, really good. And I can only imagine. I mean, like being locked away. I could see it in your eyes every time we would do a video call. I just felt like. You could see the despair and the like sitting in the room because I was like, man, John looks really tired today. But if you're sitting in a room, it drains your energy. So I was glad that you actually had a partner in crime to kind of keep you going because that's tough. I mean, that's some of the stuff that you never really think about it. Yes, of course, you're covering an event and there's all these weird things that pop up. But being in self-isolation when you're not normally used to being in self-isolation is a huge, huge drag and a huge energy dump. I mean, that's the whole reason why people still use when prisoners or people get in trouble and they're like, oh, put them in isolation.
Yeah.
There is something really to the fact of that isolation really can mess with your mind.
100% agree with that. And I mean, obviously, we had social media and we could make phone calls, so it wasn't to that level. But
so you didn't lose it completely.
You didn't lose it completely, but even when I'm at home, my wife and son are there. You know what I mean? So at least there's people to talk to. There's constant noise.
Yeah.
Trust me, there's constant noise.
Remember, she listens to it.
But at least there's somebody to talk to and interact with. But you are right, man. Over the course of 11 days, man. Just being in that room, so I look forward to like we'd get dinner at night. At least there'd be a chance to get out of the room for just a little bit to go have a meal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But then there's no hanging
Made me
out.
Jealous on that night with the whole steak night.
Oh, steaks are good, man.
And you're like, speaking of steaks, I was like, oh, I've been with this motherfucker. I know where he's going.
Morton's, dude. I'll throw down a steak.
Was it Morton's?
It was Morton's, and it was inside. It was inside our hotel, so we could just go straight there, man.
If you guys don't know, Morton's is a very cheap steakhouse, low quality, low price. So if you see them in the Texas Roadhouse, go Texas Roadhouse because Morton's is just,
Morton's was fantastic. The Cajun ribeye, they had a seasoned Cajun ribeye.
Oh, wow.
I spent so much of my stimulus money down there. I mean, the receipts I can't turn them into junkie. Like these receipts were ridiculous.
Did you do Well, a lot of no, Morton's is the shit's a la carte. So
Oh, yeah.
What'd you get on the side?
Au gratin potatoes. They had some
Nice.
was it gorgonzola au gratin or something. I was just it was
So Gorgonzola, that's a blue cheese, right?
yeah. That was so good, man. Oh,
Wow.
dude, it was
Yum.
maybe
I love me some gratin.
maybe a little bit of red wine to go along with it. Maybe a little bit.
You mean 1 or 2 bottles?
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, I know it's just your house wine, but can I get a bottle of that? They were
Yeah.
like, yeah, you can. Well, I was like, I'm not getting the expensive
But
ones.
what's funny, because somehow in recent conversation with Agent H, steaks and steak dinners have popped up. Probably because I brought it up. I was like, oh, this motherfucker's going to steak dinner. Brought up Croatia. And the big, I kept the number now. It's like telling the big whale fish story. I want to remember that it was like about a 44 ouncer, 46 ouncer.
Oh yeah, it was
something
like it was like a 3-pound steak.
something like that.
You ate like
right?
a 3-pound steak.
I remember it said normally for 2. It was like suggested for 2 in like little small print.
But it was it was in the metric system, so we didn't really
Like,
understand like how many milligrams it was.
I don't know, because yours was still a pretty decent steak.
No, I
as
had
well.
a nice big steak, but yours was normally for 2 people. But it
Yeah.
was so cheap. It was Zagreb, but it was that fight night that was
Yeah.
over there. Francis Ngannou was on the card. Derek Lewis was on the
Yeah.
card. I mean, it was a good fight night, and it was so weird because it was cheaper to stay an extra night. When you did the difference between airfare and hotel,
Right.
it was cheaper to stay 1 extra night and fly home on Monday than it
Right.
was to fly home on Sunday. So we're like, well, damn, we flew all the way over here. It's actually going to save the company money if we stay.
Right.
Let's hang out for a day. And we did. We went and had just
It was
far
incredible.
too much to drink. And
Well, I remember even I think one of the first days because Simon was there, and I remember
Mm-hmm.
we got pizzas one of the first days, and I remember they were ginormous.
Yeah.
And it wasn't much of a big price difference between the giant pizza and the steak dinner.
right.
And I remember thinking like, wow, man, these other countries, they got it good. They got it good. But that's just the whole difference when you go to a country and you get the benefit of the currency exchange or
I remember
whatever.
like liter beers were like $1.
It was like nothing.
It was amazing.
It was so crazy. But for some reason that popped up. I don't know if it was I'd have to look back to see when the day of that
Yeah, you
event.
threw down
I don't know if
I think
it was like a
I think it was like a
Facebook.
3-pound T-Mo. Because if I remember, we were trying to like give it scale in the photo, so we put like a credit card next to it or
And I
whatever.
tried to put my hand, and then
Yeah, but
nothing
then you don't know.
worked.
So it was a credit card. I was like, everybody
Yeah.
knows what size a credit card is, and it was
Right.
like literally the thickness of it was like the thickness of a credit card.
So funny because I remember talking to Agent H. She's like, "You got sides though, right?" And I was like, "I got sides. I didn't really eat
No,
much of
those
them
didn't get touched.
because it was like, all right, yeah. Do I want to eat the mushrooms or the potato off to the side, or eat this delicious steak?"
That was
So,
a great steak too.
dude, I'm telling you, my lifelong goal. Thank you to everybody on this Patreon. One day we're gonna have enough patrons that I want to find me a 96-ounce steak, like the challenge.
Oh,
But except for the challenge,
the Big
like
Texan or
when I
whatever
was a
down in
kid,
Amarillo.
yeah, there was a kid. When I was a kid, there was a movie with John Candy. I want to say it's The Great Outdoors or something. And he goes and he has the old 96er.
Right.
And remember at the time it was like the challenge of the movie was like he had to eat the steak and he had to eat the meat, the fat and everything. And he made a big ordeal about it. Whatever, blah blah blah. Nowadays you can find these 96-ounce challenges, and I'm going to give you one guess. What state is one of the states you think that this would probably exist in?
Texas. It still exists.
Texas.
It still exists in
Yes.
Amarillo, dude.
Texas-
Trust me. It still exists in Amarillo. The Big Texan.
Yeah, I
The
was going
Big
to say, like,
Texan.
Texas is all about it. But what has changed now is that, and eventually we'll get to MMA talk, but hey, there's no
Promise,
fight this week,
promise.
whatever. But they make you eat all the sides. So it's not just a 96-ounce steak. You have to eat a big thing of
Yeah, like a baked potato,
a
probably.
baked potato off the side. You
Yeah.
have to eat a salad. Some of them put rolls. Some put some other little thing. And it's like, it was already hard enough with just a 96-ounce steak.
Right.
But now you're adding all this other stuff. Whereas me, in my mind, I'm like, oh, bro, I'm never going to make the time deal. But is it worth it to eat a 96-ounce steak? Is the price value of like the dollar, whatever you have to pay?
Yeah, yeah.
But if it was me, I know I've been training my whole life to eventually get to a 96. There's all these fighters that we cover that train themselves to eventually become champions. I've been training my whole life to eventually conquer a 96-ounce steak somewhere.
That's the pinnacle. You
That
have the
is-
vision.
I'm like, I will walk up to Henry and be like, Henry, you might be an Olympic champ. I took down a 96er,
Bro.
and I want him to take the knee. I want him to bend the knee at that point and embrace my greatness
Bend the knee to the 96
to
OZ.
the 96. And I'll shortly have a heart attack after that point. But
No,
but yeah, your steak talk the
my
other day.
steak talk was good in Florida, and it was kind of a frustrating trip in a lot of ways, but I was glad I was there.
But it happened.
I'm glad it happened, and it's in the books, and we're back, and I'm happy. Now, I say we're back. I'm on furlough this week, so you've actually been working, but I did want to just give a shout-out to anybody that's going through the same things we are with furloughs and unemployment and things like that. This is my third week of furlough, and I took it a lot better than the second one. The first one, I was scrambling, right? The first week of furlough, I was scrambling. I was trying to figure out how do we make budgets work, how do we move money around, what adjustments can we make, et cetera, and it kept me busy. The second one hit me hard, and I kind of opened up on that, man. It just struck me weird for some reason. The third one, I've kept myself good, man. I've really been. I think this is the key. Not necessarily having an exact routine, but at least having goals for the day and like what you want to do. Like I've been doing some home improvement projects and like adding some shelving in some of my rooms, kind of rearranging some rooms in my house that I think we could use better, like reimagining the space and just stuff like that. Trying to make my little area better, and it's been good. So if anybody's going through the same stuff, I'll just say I guess what I figured out is at least, man, if I wake up and I've got a purpose and I got a goal and I go through it, man, it helped me deal with it a lot better.
It's finding the little successes, and I think we joked about it. And we even said it the other day, or one of these times, and I say it's in jokingness, but in all seriousness, it was just the little things of like the day that I was like, oh, well, I got up and I got dressed and I showered and stuff. Like typically,
that is a small goal.
It is.
Very little
it
victory.
is. But I can immediately go in the kitchen. I made my coffee like a normal work day. Had the coffee and I was like, okay, well, let me go ahead and get showered. Let me go ahead and get dressed or whatever. And I immediately felt better than the day before when I would just literally just like, I'm gonna mope around because a lot of days. I'll be honest, we could do what we need to do for work-wise. I could sit here in my underwear and a T-shirt, and it's no big deal. But there is a difference when, you want a sense of accomplishment, you want a sense of, like, things maybe will get back to normal, is play out the role that stuff is getting back to normal. And part of it is doing these little things that set the goals, and you achieve that, and you feel a lot better. And but you're right. I mean, not that we want to get good at being off of work or these kind of things, but it is one of those things, unfortunately, that we have to deal with, and we still have some weeks to deal. I have 2 weeks coming up.
2 weeks left.
I'll be
still
off
have 1
next
week left.
week, and then I have another week in June that we have to do. But which is crazy because part of you wants to lash out because you're like, well, fights are back. We should be good. We should be good. But as a whole, as a company, as a one team organization, everybody's kind of embracing it and kind of taking it as a team, and it's not like the economy has fully got back. And either way, things are starting to slowly open up and starting to get better. I was telling you I was finally able to get my hair cut the other day, and I feel so much better, even just those little things like that. But you feel like things are getting back to normal, and the fact that now it's like, oh, hey, there's another fight going on. Okay, I need to go on and start applying for credentials. And then I was like, oh, shit, because I reached out to our one of our contacts at the UFC. I was like, hey, what's the deal for next week? Can we get one credential, or is it multiple credentials? What's the deal? Look at the calendar, and immediately was like, oh, well, shoot.
You can't even work next week
So
anyway.
I wrote back and was like, well, sorry,
Sorry.
buddy, I'm on damn furlough next week.
Just realized it.
Just ignore my message, And they pretty much told me, one, they're still working out the logistics. It seems like they're still figuring out what's going to happen here on the May 30th for the Apex show. But also then they wrote back and was like, and sorry for your furlough. And I was like, is what it is, But it was just part of me. My brain was immediately quick to want to switch back into that we're back to fights. We're back to normal. I mean, one of the greatest things about last week, besides the fact of 3 weeks of fight, NASCAR was back on.
Yeah.
There was golf that was on. I think there's golf that's going to be
I'm going to watch the golf this
coming
weekend.
week.
Yeah,
I mean?
Tiger and Phil. And
It's slowly getting there. Regardless, I mean, I know a lot of people wanted to be upset about the worries about spreading the sickness and other stuff, and they were all valid worries. But it was all about, the only way to move forward, whether it be going to a restaurant to get dine-in food or whether to go to the grocery stores to make sure that the right steps were taking place, that life and that the economy and that things could move forward. And the UFC, while it is an entertainment field, is still an employment. It is still a job for a lot of these contractors. Unfortunately, they should be employees, whatever. Things needed to move forward in that, so we're getting the entertainment moving forward. But even around us, even seeing some of the parts of Vegas open up fills me with so much more joy that you feel like we're getting back to normal. And then the fact that now we're looking at, okay, what's the next fight week? Oh, okay, it's next week. It's starting to get
So
this.
nice.
It's starting like this fog that's been hanging over feels like it's starting to clear. I mean, I still carry my mask in my car everywhere I go.
Well,
I
you
put my mask
I mean, listen,
in,
you have to. I think that's the big key to remember is that we want to all get back to normal, and we want things to be, the way that we like them to be. And I'm happy that we have this opportunity to work again. I'm happy that we have an opportunity to watch the sport that we love. But at the same time, we do have to remember at all times, stay sharp, stay focused on the issues. You know what I mean, and the adjustments that you have to make. You know what I mean? Like, it's not 100% back to normal. It's it's getting there.
It's eking. It's slowly starting. The ball is starting to roll. And speaking of starting to roll, we started the ball rolling this evening, and we should probably give props.
Shout out to Latchkey Brewing. We might have pre-gamed a little bit. Before we sat down to record this on a wonderful, beautiful Thursday afternoon in Las Vegas.
Had to catch up.
It's been a while. I haven't seen you in 3 weeks. We had to talk a little bit. So we pre-gamed a little bit.
In dog years, that's like
3
10.
weeks? Latchkey Brewing.
Look at me bringing math into the story, and then it immediately just falls apart.
Done.
Not a mathematician.
Shout out to Latchkey Brewing, our boy Anthony Beach over there, the brewer extraordinaire, 1795 Hancock Street in San Diego, California. We started out with the Slappin' Zwickel. It's a Zwickel beer, which is an unfiltered pale lager. It's unfiltered, crisp, dry pale lager, and it's lightly dry hopped, and it went down smooth.
I like it because you had to explain, because you're like, it's a Zwickel beer. Like, everybody knows what a Zwickel beer is.
I'm just reading the notes, man. All I know, like Anthony Beach.
For all you that didn't know what a Zwickel beer was,
we got to get Anthony on here one day to like just actually talk some beer. That dude knows beer like no other, man.
Dude, he's got the sweet tones of beer knowledge.
Every
time he gets into it, it's like mesmerizing, because it is such an amazing process. Like, have you ever tried to brew your own home brew?
No.
I've done it, and I've done it multiple times, and it's very easy to just really be very bad at it. And most times I'm very, very bad at it. So when you can actually do it very well, there's so much science behind it, and there's so much just you have to be perfect in what you're doing to get a quality product, and let alone to get it consistent. So to hear people talk about it that know what they're talking about, because a lot of times when the UFC sound guy, Tracy, in the back, he's a brewer as well.
Yeah, he makes some great brews.
It's absolutely amazing. Let's
It's no latchkey, but it's pretty good.
It's no latchkey,
but it's pretty good.
Just to peel the curtain, a lot of times we'll go to these shows, and Tracy's always doing the sound. One of the most incredible, just super, super nice guys that you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
And he brings to a lot of events every once in a while. He'll bring like 5, 6, 8, 10, whatever he could put in his luggage of different bottles of beer that he's made from his home brew. And it's been like this just like secret pleasure every other event or whatever of getting like to taste one of his home brews. It's kind of funny.
We don't do it while we're there.
Not while we're working,
but he'll hand over a couple beers and say, "Hey, here's my latest brew." And then we'll take it back to the room and have a little bit.
And that's where I always mess up, because he's always like, "Hey, bring me the bottle back," or whatever, So we take it home, and I always forget to bring the bottle back. I usually eventually bring it back.
I have two of his bottles at my house right now.
And what's worse is because usually, say if it's like weigh-in day or whatever, and we see him, and he's like, "Oh, Brute, try this," whatever, because he makes like chocolate stout mixed with blah 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 blah. It's like fight night. I'm bringing the empties back to him, which looks terrible. So I'm always trying to like hide it. I'm like, here's your empty, because he doesn't live in Vegas, so it's not like I can.
That's right, he lives in Oklahoma,
and I'm not gonna mail it or whatever.
Yeah.
But there is something to be said about people that do this sort of thing. That is just it absolutely intrigues me, because I've tried it and I suck at it. So the guys that actually make beers and make them very, very good just blows my mind. And shout out to Tracy. One is a hell of a sound guy, but he's a hell of a brewer as well. But like you said, he's no latchkey.
It's no latchkey.
He's no latchkey.
Shout out to Tracy for sure. He actually was a big help behind the scenes, man. Jose Youngs was having some tech issues from MMA fighting in
Audio
Jacksonville.
issues?
Yeah, he was having some camera issues, which isn't even really Tracy's thing, but he was having some camera issues, and it had to do with the audio and that sort of thing. And Tracy, I mean, doesn't have to do this for his job.
Did he reach out to somebody else to help?
Literally, downloaded the manual, was reading
Shut
through the manual,
up.
just did all these little adjustments and helped Jose from
Yeah.
MMA fighting. Jose wouldn't have had usable audio if it weren't
Wow.
for Tracy, who is. This is not his job. He
Yeah.
gets paid to set up the audio and run the press conferences and all that. And by the way,
That's unreal.
Tracy was tasked with the responsibility of like handing a new microphone. They had a new microphone for
I was
every
wondering what the
single
process
fighter.
about that because you did see them come up there and did it, and I didn't know if
Yep.
they immediately took it back and then wiped it
Nope.
down.
Every single fighter, they had a new microphone for every fighter.
They didn't just wipe them down.
No, and then he took those and sanitized
That's a
them.
lot of
microphones.
microphones.
Dude, we all had microphones at our tables too.
Holy cow!
I mean, there had to be 30
and that's the stuff
microphones.
that's the stuff that nobody knows about.
Yeah.
And I wondered about that when I saw them go up there and swap the mic. I just immediately assumed, okay, if I was there, knowing what they normally do, they have two mics that maybe float around the floor, and then they have one that's sitting up into the
Right.
post fight thing, and there might be one back in the back
Yep.
as like a backup. So you usually see maybe 4 microphones. So the fact that they did something like that, they would have had to have ordered a paid
Ton of microphones,
Yeah.
and with lights, and no windscreen on them because obviously that you can't clean that.
Yeah.
You can't clean the foam, so it wouldn't have that. But then he was explaining there's a chemical that you can spray in there that's designed to combat this stuff. But that way it penetrates the mesh of the microphone, but it's still safe
the
for the
inside?
microphone itself. Yeah. So
Dude.
Tracy was tasked with doing all that. So
and he still picked it up. And that's why I say it. And like, and then I still feel like we're sort of talking about fights.
It's MMA.
Whatever. It's MMA. Covering boxing and covering other sports, you'll hear us every once in a while joke and we laugh and we say about how sort of the whole ecosystem that is the MMA media and the UFC, Bellator, the promotion, the sort of relationship that goes around this traveling circus, that while it is a traveling circus, there are so many people that look out for each other and help each other to make sure that we're able to get our jobs done. Like, I knew if I was there, I probably would have did the same thing to try to help him out, to try to download it. So I love the fact that Tracy could have easily just been like, who are you?
Yeah.
Like, no. But I mean, like, the traveling circus is the same sort of minstrels and jokers that jump around, that of course he's going to try to help out, whereas if I've been to so many boxing events where I'm just literally another just random number, and if something like that happened, I would have, sorry, I don't have audio, and it just happened. So as much as, people want to harp on, doing some of this stuff or some of the media, it's stories like that just reaffirm to me that how it is, everybody does seem to, it's so funny because it just seems that everybody sort of does try to look out, even though we're all competitors, a lot
Yeah.
of us. You do this enough time when you see somebody, 50 times in the year, why would you want to be a jerk and not help somebody out?
Well,
you
and
know?
so that's Tracy. Again, not Tracy's job to do that, but he was like bound and determined to get this thing fixed. But a couple of the audio files that Jose that were corrupted that
Yeah.
they couldn't use, they weren't corrupted. They just had so much like static on them and clicks that they just couldn't really use
Yeah.
it. Oscar actually was like, "Here, bro, take the audio," and hooked him up with the audio so he could sync it up. So there
So
you go,
Mac
man.
Life helping out MMA fighting.
MMA fighting. You know what I mean? Just saying,
And
look, I got you.
Casey's helped me out in a pinch before when something's happened with my shit, and I've reached out and be like, bro, something happened. Can I get audio? And this is like one of those things that
Peeling back the curtain a little bit, we're all competitive as hell, but
we're all friends.
Things happen, man. You know what I mean?
shit happens, and
Yeah.
I would literally feel like a piece of poop if Casey or one of the regulars, and I don't just say, I mean, like any of it, if I see you grinding and out there week after week after week, and something happened and you lost an audio file and you came up to
An
me,
equipment failure.
I literally would feel like a piece of shit if I didn't give you something that was an easy enough lift. It takes you a few moments or whatever. I mean, I've helped the Review Journal, like Fang, one of the last events, something happened, and I don't even bat an eye on that kind of shit because I know I could go to them if something happened. And
Absolutely.
it has happened. So, I mean, that's one of the beautiful things, that even though we all cover a sport that is very violent in nature, a lot of us, while we are still competitors, help each other out. So, I mean, I absolutely love it. And it's so funny, because I think everybody, while we are still, just like anybody else in a sport that does whatever, of course you want to beat your competitor.
Mm-hmm.
Of course you want to be the better, you want to get better numbers and whatever. But we're all, at the end of the day, it's a job, and do and carry yourself in a way that you can be proud of. Like if I didn't help somebody out, knowing that, oh, okay, they're going to be struggling to get that out, I'm going to get some extra views, and I go home and I have to look myself in the mirror, I'm going to feel like a piece of shit because I'm going to see the same person in a week's time. And what are you going to do? Because then at that point, the relationship is different and it's just weird. And I would rather, help somebody out and knowing that, okay, yeah, maybe we're not going to get as many views, knowing that I'm still a human being.
That's right.
So it definitely goes both ways. So I love hearing that. I mean, like, I wish there were more stories of that where people understood really that while we are competitors, and I will talk shit so much about these guys, I still ultimately love them to death, because they are friends as well as competitors.
That's how we exist behind the scenes. And
screw MMA fighting,
right?
Screw Mac Life, fuck them both,
right?
But I love those dudes.
But the people are all right. The sites can go to hell, but the people themselves are all right. That message, by the way, is brought to you and fueled by Latchkey Brewing, because after we had the Slap and Zwickle, we then moved on to the Check Please. It's a check pale lager. It's
check please, because I'm checked out already.
Light-bodied, floral, and a nice citrusy finish.
And 5.6% alcohol by volume.
Yeah, by the way. So shout out to Latchkey Brewing for bringing this type of honesty right away off the top.
5%. And what's crazy, because they're lighter colored. They both look like lagers, but it packs it
was good.
It packs a little punch. And then we moved on to don't tell all of our listeners because they will yell at us that we switched to the All-American brew. Yeah. Even though I did have some Pacificos, which I ultimately planned to bring out. But John came over, even though I told him I had some leftover Pacificos and limes, and I had some PBR already in the fridge. He brought some PBR, so I had to stick it in the freezer because I didn't have space in the fridge.
Ice cold.
And then it's got super, super ice cold, so we brought that out. So we skipped Mexico, and we went back to America with this PBR.
Yeah. I got nothing against Mexico, but when you got some award-winning Pabst Blue Ribbon.
Dude, but I'm telling you, lately, like... I like Modelo's. I like Pacificos. Modelo's is what Constellation brand, which we got a lot of love for Constellation brands.
Got a lot of love Constellation brands.
But man, Pacifico, for some reason, man, I just lately have been on a super kick for them, especially out of a bottle. They're better out of a bottle than a can on those particular ones. But then you put a little lime in there.
100%. Modelo in a can doesn't count. Don't get Modelo in a can. It doesn't taste the same.
As much as this, like. They're just going to shit on us because you don't notice as much of a difference of a PBR bottle from a PBR can. But some of the other beers,
Modelo can is no good. I'm going to tell you right now, do not get if you're getting Modelo Especial, don't get in the can. Get in the bottle.
Yeah, you got to get in the bottle. But yeah, so I got a few of those. Maybe we'll splurge by the end of this because I got some limes. I mean, there ain't nothing, especially with the weather right now, is absolutely incredible right now in Vegas.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
It's been nice. We hit a few hundreds, but it's been like in the 80s this past few days.
The pain is back.
This whole week's
the pain is back after a hot April. We got a mild May. Well, we're going to get to experience a lot of Vegas, it seems like. You mentioned it, man, the UFC Apex shows. So to kind of update everybody on where everything is, the UFC has formally applied to the Nevada State Athletic Commission for events at the Apex on May 30th and June the 6th. Now, here's the interesting part. The phone hearing...
They're cutting it close.
They're cutting it really close. The phone hearing where this is going to be discussed is on Wednesday, May the 27th. So we're talking about next Wednesday for a show that's going to happen next Saturday.
Mean 3 days before?
Yes. Now, I'm going to tell you behind the scenes, I don't believe the UFC would I mean... Look, we see this a lot. If you've paid attention to these commission meetings, it's not as if they show up to the commission meetings and they discuss a topic for the first time. You know what I mean? It's not like, okay, hey, we know we've had this on the calendar. Let's talk about this topic. No. You can know that the UFC has been in constant contact with the Athletic Commission. They've discussing protocols. I'm sure they showed them the plans from Florida and what was done down in Jacksonville, and it's going to be handled all the same at the UFC Apex, I imagine. We don't know that. I haven't been able to get any information from the UFC just yet.
Even more so.
Yeah, I imagine. I'm just guessing. I imagine they'll probably test us again the same way. I mean, you still got to create that bubble, right? So I imagine they're going to do that, and it's going to be I tell you what I have heard, which is interesting because you reached out to find out are we going to have one credential or two. I have heard that there's probably going to be even less media in the Apex than there was in Jacksonville, just because in Jacksonville you had that 15,000 seat stadium, so it's massive, and they could section it off.
It's hard to distance in a.
That's it, a smaller area. I mean, like for instance, our press room. I mean, we were on the main concourse of the arena. I mean, there's literally nobody else in the concourse, so it's kind of like we had our own little building. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? In the Apex, you don't have that. You got smaller sections. So we'll see what's going to happen. But so just so everybody knows what's going on, it should happen May 27th. Is that when the meeting is? The meeting will kick off. It's a phone meeting, just like we talked about before. You don't necessarily have to be in person. The first bit of new business will be, and I'll just read it straight from their schedule, a hearing on the approval of Nevada State Athletic Commission COVID-19 protocols for events held without the presence of a live audience, pending removal or modification of restrictions created by declaration of emergency directives for possible action. So first they got to basically approve that, hey, here's what's going to be our process for hosting events.
Yeah.
And you got to believe
These
it's
certain
based.
things need to be met before we even start.
That's it. And you got to believe that a lot of it is going to be based around what the UFC has already done.
Yep.
They have proof of concept. They have a plan. Then after that, as soon as that's approved, then the May 30th and June 6th shows can be approved. By the way, Top Rank Boxing, which is kind of funny because Bob Arum was out there just trashing the UFC and Dana White. They also have cards scheduled June 9th and June 11th at the MGM Grand, so they're trying to get approval as well. So as much as they said this was cowboy behavior a week ago, now it's fine, So
I hope so. Have you seen the Ring Car Girls?
Top Rank Boxing does well.
Yes, they do.
They do well. All right, so here's the interesting part about all this. So I don't think it's going to be an issue. I'm pretty sure that it's going to get approved. They're going to say, hey, do what you do what you did back then. Let's do it.
I mean, it's one thing beforehand, before anything happened, when it was just like them trying to rush to do stuff. But now you got NASCAR happened.
Right.
Golf has happened.
Right.
I mean, at this point, there, and even in Vegas, we've talked multiple times before about our governor of Nevada fighting against our mayor to open stuff up. You have casinos starting to ramp up, starting to open. It just makes sense that with what's already sort of happened, that they can tweak the thing where it makes it seem like they've actually have some input into what's going on or whatever, because of course they gotta seem like they're doing something, I would be very, very surprised that this isn't already a done deal.
I think it's basically agreed to, and they just got to play it out. Here's the interesting part. So the fights are getting out there. Everybody's starting to find out what they are. Of course, that's Gilbert Burns and Tyron Woodley in the main event there for May 30th. I think about 8 or 9 fights have been kind of reported over the last couple of days. Here's the thing is, it's not even listed on UFC.com yet, and they haven't officially announced anything. I don't think they really can, to be honest. I think
without knowing for sure, because then it's almost like playing their hand.
That's it. I think they've got to wait. So I think it's
they have to wait till after
Wednesday. I think we might be like next Wednesday before the UFC ever officially acknowledges the card and what it is.
Unless they had like some sort of, unless the UFC is like, and this would tee it off to the fact that they're like, all right, commission, you have to really help us. Can you, any way possible, have an emergency meeting before that time,
right,
to where they can give them like a full week to do it or whatever? But I can see where the commission's like, no, this we got to flex ourselves a little bit here. Yeah, that's crazy. Because if they went ahead and put anything before, it's like a slap in the commission's face.
I think
say
so.
Like it's already been done. Or
I mean,
whatever.
look, it wouldn't surprise me at some point if the UFC does something, Monday, or hell, it may even happen as I'm driving home today.
Yep.
But I'm just saying, it's something to think about. So they might not announce anything,
Yep.
And I think that's a little bit weird, but I think everybody just has to realize that's kind of the way shit is right now, basically, for lack of a better
It's just so
term.
weird because the commission has done so many things, and there's no, it doesn't say anywhere that they can't meet earlier than Wednesday. They just kind of have these things set because most of them do other jobs outside of this. This isn't like their first.
But let's not forget, the Athletic Commission are government-appointed employees, and they're appointed by the governor.
True.
And the governor has very much been in favor of slow down.
Sure.
We're not opening up right away.
Sure.
So I bet that, as much as they're probably like, hey, UFC, we're down for you.
Yeah.
We're good with your plan. We know it's your facility, that we know there's no public in there other than your employees and the fighters.
Right.
We're good with all this. But our boss
That's
over
true.
here has got a little bit different way of thinking.
That's true. I forgot about that portion,
Yeah,
but you're
so
right.
I bet that's part of it, is that like they can't make Sisolak think that like they're just out there cowboy behavior doing whatever they want,
doing their own thing. Yeah, because that has sort of happened where you see like a lot of people are kind of doing their own little thing. That's interesting because where I was going with the whole like meeting beforehand. How many times every time we go there for a meeting about somebody's punishment or whatever, and we get there to all say that it's already been mediated and all we're doing is having an agreement.
You assume you're going to be
you're gonna hear
witnessing
it.
the mediation.
They're like, nope.
It's like, no, we had an agreement. We've reached it. We signed it.
Here
He
it
signed
is.
it. We're all good with it. Yep, we're all good with it.
It's like, well, okay, well, if that's the case, I mean, if you know that you're going to say it's okay on that Wednesday, can we just do it the Friday before so we can actually promote it and talk about it or do whatever? So it's interesting. I think there is probably a lot of politics and a lot of smoke and mirrors that they need to sort of act like they're playing along it, but I would be super surprised that this already at this point, for them to even just say that it's happening in Vegas, you would think that the discussions have already happened to say
for
that
Dana
it's
White
here.
to tell Adam Hill we're good to go on April 30th, when I can tell you, or May 30th, I should say,
Yeah.
for him to say that, when I can tell you when we were in Florida, we were asking him, and he was like, I don't think it's going to happen, man. He's like, you know what I mean? Like, so I definitely think behind closed doors, everybody's, hey, we're good.
Which is fine because it's all formalities. I mean, to think that, you know, like we were just saying about like with punishments, we show up and it's already done. It's just a discussion and just needs to. If you put your business plan, it's the same thing that they're asking casinos and any business to do is, you know, you put your plan out there, you put your business proposal. They're asking all these casinos, well, put your proposal to the gaming commission. They'll look at it, make sure it's all good, and then it's good to go.
Mm-hmm.
They already have proof of concept. They already did it. They already put 3 events on in a state, and they showed that it worked. So what's there to discuss at this point?
I agree. Just, hey,
You know?
we're going to follow this plan, and that's that.
Yeah, I mean, they're besides
I
just
guess the big key. I guess, you know, the maybe the only 2 discussion points that would come up, and we'll be interested. You know what? I'll be very interested to hear if this gets brought up on the call. The 2 interesting discussion points would probably be the points that were brought up by the New York Times. Dana, are you going to be fist bumping the fighters? We don't want you fist bumping the fighters. That is a contact point that can be avoided. And also, your plan says no in-cage interviews.
Did I bring that up between the second and then the last show?
Yes.
What did he do on the last show?
He would. He did the same thing.
Still
Same thing.
fist
Yeah, he
bumped?
still fist bumped. Yeah. Even after that was brought up. Yeah, he's just like he doesn't. I mean, his point.
Which is so funny because I don't
his
really
point-
remember him ever doing fist bumps.
Oh, I know. Well,
He
I guess
never- I mean,
I
like,
guess they're at
let's-
least doing fist bumping over like hugs and handshakes. So I guess the fist bump
But a
is
lot
probably.
of fights. How many times do you see Dana hugging on ceremonials? Or even
it just
fist bump?
depends.
He doesn't really.
But obviously
he
those.
might, when they come over him, he gives him a handshake after they sit on the scales, and he may do it.
But you know what I'll say too? It's a weird feeling, like those, and you've been in them. The ones that don't have the music playing, the ceremonials that follow the officials when they're really just like in a small. It is a weird environment. Like it's dead quiet.
Yeah.
Now there's no fans at all, so it's literally just like 7 media people in there. Like I know there were a couple fighters. They're like, "Hey, clap for me." And you're like, "Well, we can't really do that, you know.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what we're here for." So it is weird. So I think maybe that has something to do with it, where it's like the pure dead silence. And I don't know. Maybe it's also like, bro, thank you. I know what you're going through or whatever. But
maybe it feels like super quaint and whatever, and it's hard to not feel like, oh, hey, man, what's up, man? Blah, blah, blah.
I get Dana. Look, I know what Dana's argument. Dana's argument is everybody here has been tested. We've all tested negative. The problem with his argument is that, you know, you can test negative one day and then test positive the next. You know what I mean?
And unless you're completely watching that person and can trace exactly where they go, that doesn't mean that you're
That's
not
right.
passing.
So you could arrive, test negative, and then you could go out and run through the streets.
Have you seen any of the weird videos of people, well, whatever, sort of like showing how easy it is to pass something along? Some people have been like putting stuff on their hand, and then they'll have dinner at a place or whatever, and then they put like the black light on, and then they show all the stuff, and like shit's everywhere over their faces and all this other stuff, you know. And there's faults to that or whatever, but I mean, it's so easy without people living in a bubble, you know, and have these fighters go and test and then don't leave that said bubble. Right. There's no guarantee.
I mean, that was the recommendation. That was what we were told to do. So I mean, like that's I never left my room. I mean, other than to go eat, and I never left the hotel. I only left the hotel property.
Especially now when you got what's the website that you found?
Oh, saucy.com, bro. They'll bring it right to your door, dude. I was living it up, man. Oh, saucy.com.
Is that just a Florida thing?
No, they were in like Dallas and Houston, and I don't think Vegas was one of the things. I think LA was one of their places.
There are places in Vegas you can get stuff delivered, but a lot of them, well, it was a little while back. You had to order for like the next day. Because I remember one day.
Oh, this would bring it within an hour.
That's all. See, because there was a day we were having a podcast.
Yeah.
I was going to order us some whiskey or tequila and some beer, and they were like, "All right, we'll deliver it tomorrow." I was like, "Wow." Screw you. I was like, I need it now.
I mean, basically all they do is it's like the same people doing DoorDash or whatever. You know what I mean? Like or whatever. They just but it's the best, man. Liquor showing up to your door. You don't even have to leave.
Hey, Saucy, push up those advertising.
They'll bring you some mixers if you want. Oh, dude, we are a natural fit for Saucy. They should definitely. I'm a user.
You are a bit saucy.
I'm
aren't
a
you?
bit saucy.
I'm a bit sassy. Can we find Saucy and Sassy.com?
I'll be interested to see at this meeting if they bring those things up. Because again, I understand the USC's argument, and I'm not saying that they're right or they're wrong. I think there's arguments on both sides of it, you know. But what I would say is if I was writing the perfect plan of eliminating all contacts, I would say, yeah, Dana, don't fist bump. Eliminate contacts. And the in-cage interviewers should intercage. So I'll be interested to hear that. Here's some other things worth monitoring, I think, as far as these upcoming events. The broadcast.
It did help having the person for the interview. That there was a sense of normalcy about
that is true. Yeah.
The interview that just felt like, and I didn't even think about it until after the fact when I think you or somebody or just people were talking about how they were in cage interviews. I didn't even think about it because it was just like you were watching fights and I want it to be normal. And I remember seeing the interviews, and I just didn't even think one bit about how a protocol was being broke or whatever, just because you wanted it to be like a normal fight night.
It's so I've been watching the Submission Underground events that have happened in between. You know, there's been a couple of them, and Submission Underground, to their credit, they've been going out of their way to eliminate contacts and stuff. So it's funny what they do is like when the referee ends the fight, he just goes back to the back of the cage and puts the fighters in their corners, and then he just says winner, you know, this side. So he doesn't like raise a hand, he doesn't touch anybody. And then there's no in-cage interviews afterwards. It's just like, all right, leave the cage, bye. And nobody gets to say anything.
Yeah.
So it does. It feels weird. Like I'm glad it's something and they're being safe, but it does. It's not that that sense of normalcy back. But again, if you were a doctor or you were talking to a doctor, you would say, hey, let's keep these people apart. That's the whole point right now is to keep people apart. So we'll see if that comes up. The broadcast situation, I'm kind of interested to see that too at the Apex shows. So I was talking to a couple members of the UFC broadcast team. They said that they weren't exactly sure what was going to happen yet. But it's been such a story how much the fighters could hear the broadcast and how they were making adjustments and that sort of thing. I mean, Kevin Holland made a joke about like he was worried about not being able to hear his Daniel Cormier cheat codes, and so he wasn't sure how he was going to act, that sort of thing. At the Apex so far, and it's not a huge venue, but of course there's also not many people in it, but there's not a broadcast table in there. I mean, they definitely could add one, but they were obviously pulled back a little bit from the cage. I don't know if they'll have that set up. So I'm going to be interested to see. It had been such a talk about how the broadcast team was potentially influencing fights, and by the way, potentially influencing judges as well, because the judges are hearing that commentary as well very, very clearly about who's winning, who's having success, who's struggling, who needs to make adjustments, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know that that's going to be the setup in the Apex, because it's not the way the setup is there now. And I'll be kind of interested to see what they do with that. So that's one that I'm anxious to see kind of what the setup is, and if this story that we've been following of how the broadcast is affecting fighters carries on. The other one,
speaking of the broadcast, I thought by that last show, they arranged the people in the right positions. The first event, you had guys looking in awkward directions, right. I think, unless I'm crazy, unless I'm making this up in my mind. The first event, when it showed three guys on their different seats.
Oh, so they
weren't looking like what would be if they were sitting in the right way, and I think they fixed that.
That's funny.
I might be
I'll
crazy.
Have to go back and check that.
I might be making that up in my mind, but I felt like the first event they didn't have that right.
Right.
And then they got it right, because I remember by the last event I was like, okay, when
they figured it out.
So and so off to the left hand side is talking, the other two guys on the right side are looking to their right, which looks camera left. And it looked like they were looking at the right direction. So, but I remember the first one, I was like, whoa, this is weird. Like, what am I looking
in the right
at?
Spot?
Yeah. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm making that up. But go back and look at the first event and see if that's true. See if maybe it started that way and got fixed or whatever. But I have a feeling that's what it was. Just weird.
It makes sense. Like something that nobody thought about, and then they're like, oh god.
They're like, oh yeah. And the only way to fix it, that would be the quick fix. That first night would be like, only look at the camera.
Right. Don't
look off to the person. Like what feels natural, look at the camera, so you're always looking forward. instead of off to the side. That's what I would do if I was in a pinch. Like we're like, oh fuck,
That is
we
that is
messed
the
up.
observation of a video production person.
Yeah. Well, I'm weird.
Well, here's one that I'll take your feedback on this too. Now, I think I already know that Dana has mentioned, because it's been brought up. Dana mentioned that they're not really looking at options like piping in crowd noise and that sort of thing, because he says, he wants it to be just what it is. And
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, I kind of agree with that. Like, I don't think you should create a fake atmosphere. Like, let the
No.
atmosphere be what it is. But it's interesting.
Because they would look back in time and just be like, why did we decide that?
So here's what's interesting, right? Soccer, I've always said soccer is my second favorite sport outside of MMA. I watch ESPN FC, which is their daily soccer show. And the Bundesliga, which is the German league, they started back play recently as well. So they've had a round of games this past weekend. And they actually talked to one of the guys, longtime announcer Ian Dark, who was called Soccer Games Forever. He actually called a game from his house. So they
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they ran in all the stuff, and he called a game from his. And he talked about the struggles. He mentioned like at one point there was like a corner kick, and like as the guy was running up to take the kick, the screen froze. The screen froze. Yeah. So there's a ball in the air on a corner kick in front of the goal, and he can't say anything because he can't see it. And then all of a sudden the screen unfreezes, and the keeper has the ball, and he's like, save, I guess. So he was talking about how like the technological things, and that's the thing I've mentioned to you before, like when we talk about whether it be moving judges to other rooms or that sort of thing. I always worry about what if they lose the feed? What if something happens?
Yeah.
How the hell?
The delay.
You can't have that. So now inside the Apex, I've said whether it be the commentators, the judges, I've got to believe inside the multi-million-dollar brand new facility. That probably wouldn't be. I mean, you can never say never, right? When it comes to technological issues, things could pop up. But it was interesting. So Ian was saying that from a long-time commentator's perspective, he said that it made it difficult to feel the moment, without the crowd. And he said the games felt less important. He said it felt like reserve matches where there's nobody in the crowds. And so he said, like, as a long-time commentator and a passionate guy about soccer, he said, I would love for there to be crowd noise pumped in. I would like the idea of crowd noise pumped in. I don't know. I be honest with you, I'm adamantly against pumping in any kind of fake crowd noise, man. And I don't know, maybe fight sport is different than team sport, but I think the atmosphere should be what it is.
Yeah, I mean, there's a point where even when you watched a lot of comedies, they used to always pipe in laugh tracks. And, of course, that helps carry it. It helps suggest or whatever. But if a person, part of it, I think that's just a challenge, and I think that's just a challenge that I think every broadcaster, every on-air talent will have to either adjust to, and some will be better than others. But adding an addition that's not real, when people go back and I think look at it and they realize that, oh, hey, there was no crowd in this event. I look back, this event took place during the pandemic when nothing was happening. Why am I hearing crowd noise?
Yeah.
They will always look back at that and say, oh, remember when they felt like they needed to add this music track or this whatever? And there's just something not cheap. Cheap isn't the right way, but I think it's an initial sort of embellishment that eventually could probably be looked upon weird. It's better just to do it as is and keep the moment true to itself. Once you start adding some extra stuff like that, you're changing the moment, you're changing the environment, you're changing history.
It's not an accurate representation
It's
of what
not
was
a
happening.
representation, right? Then I feel like I'm watching a sitcom. And
exactly,
it's
with
like,
a laugh track in there.
So I don't know. It just that's more upon them. I mean, it sucks that it feels that way. Unfortunately, that's the way.
And again, it might have added to his challenges that he was calling from his house.
Was he by himself too?
I think he was working with somebody else, but not there. I think they were remotely.
But still, he had another person to bounce off, which that is a lot better. It'd be one thing if you had to call an event distant with no crowd by yourself and nothing to bounce off.
There's no feedback. That's
no
that's
feedback.
the thing I was
that's
saying.
the part you thrive off.
Well, that's the thing I was joking with Buffer, but I'm like, dude, Bruce, you've got a ridiculously hard job because you got to bring all that energy.
Yeah.
And there's no feed. You know what I mean? You're like, screaming out, and there's nobody answering back to you. So like, did I nail it? Did I suck? Did I? You know what I mean?
Three events, and none of them could get through without sort of. I think even towards the end, they just sort of embraced the, make some noise or. Let's give it to them, ladies and gentlemen, because then at that point they could just be addressing the TV audience, like clap at your house.
I tell you what, and
know.
I shared this on the and a half episode, but I thought a cool moment of the Walt Harris loss, unfortunately, was, as you said, throughout those 3 shows, there were occasional moments where somebody would say, "Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for so and so," and everybody's just like, "What? There's nobody here," and they were really giggling and laughing. Everybody there, they interviewed, and I can't remember who it was. Now I feel bad. Was it Bisping, or I can't remember who interviewed Walt Harris, but he did say he ended it with something like that, like "Ladies and gentlemen, Walt Harris," or "Give it up for Walt Harris," and all the crew was clapping, and I thought it was a special moment. You know what I mean? Because everybody knew what that guy had been through and how cool of a guy he is, and the pain he had been through, and like, even though we had heard that a bunch of times over the course of 3 nights and just kind of giggled at it, that time everybody actually clapped and had some respect. It was I don't know, it's cool to see. Man.
It's funny because after I had heard that a few times, I stopped thinking about, oh, hey, there's no crowd there, there's no whatever there. I was just like, they're just talking to us at home.
Because that's all right. I think you can say that.
And at that point, that's how I took it. I was just like, I was like, you're right. I was like, that was awesome. And I was like, yeah, I said my own little whatever. So then I didn't take it at that point of, oh man, there's nobody there.
What an idiot! Oh my God,
I can't believe he messed up.
I agree. You're just talking to the home audience.
It was just weird. That the first event or so, I was like, okay, ha ha ha. There's still whatever, and then because they always joke about it on the air.
Yeah.
But then after that, they just kind of owned it, and by not addressing it, it wasn't an issue anymore. So it is what it is. I mean, one, that's just ingrained people because you want to give that moment, but there's nothing wrong with cheering at your house, telling the people at home, cheer.
That's it. So that's what we're going to be watching for. May 30th, June 6th, UFC Apex. We'll have home games, as you said. You're back on furlough next week, so you can't cover that one. June 6th. We're both working, so we'll both be there if we can. We don't really know yet. We don't know how the credential process is going to work.
I'll sneak in the back door.
We'll find a place for you somewhere there. And then I'll tell you the interesting one. So that's the only ones that they've applied for. June 13th, they did not apply for with the Nevada State Athletic Commission. Now, look, you got to think that there's going to be another meeting at some point in June where they could apply for other dates. But I am actually very, very curious if June 13th is going to be the first Fight Island date. There was a report, for instance, that Ariane Lipsky is on that card. She's in Brazil right now. She's training in Brazil. So if she is, you have to think that, well, maybe they are. This is an international card. My understanding is Peter Yan is still preparing to fight on that date. Now he said there may be other options on the table, but so I'm curious to see if June 13th. That sounds a little early from where they wanted it to be. They said kind of late June, but it sounds like maybe that could be it.
Did you hear anything else? I mean, besides what I thought I had told you that I thought I'd heard the word of where Fight Island. Have you heard it? I mean, you've been on the ground now for a little bit. Have you heard any tips, any hints of where people are thinking that it's leaning?
I know nothing about Fight Island, man. It is the craziest. It's the best kept secret in the history of the company. I'm going to say that it's the best kept secret in the history of the company. I know there's some people that know. Because some people in the company have to be shipping equipment there, getting arrangements made, doing all that. But, man, you can't get anybody to talk. I'm impressed.
Yeah, it's literally. Have you went on record to say where you think it is?
No, I haven't. And again, this is pure. I mean, look.
Let's
preface
speculate.
this by saying it's pure speculation. I think it's got to be somewhere in the Caribbean, something like that. Easily accessible, quick trip.
I gotta stop eating pretzels.
Easily accessible, quick trip. We made it. We have confirmed. I asked him. He said we didn't buy an island. We made an arrangement with an island. It's got to have. Now I was having a discussion with some people. They were like, it's got to have a venue. It doesn't have to have a venue. It really just has to have a warehouse, right? I mean, you don't need an arena, right? Because
that's true.
Fans aren't going to be there. So I think some people have said it's got to have an arena.
Center of
it could
sorts.
be anything. It could be it could literally be a warehouse. Now that would take a lot more infrastructure for you to bring in. It'd be better if you had, like you said, a convention center that probably at least had some lighting rigs and stuff like that. But it doesn't need an arena. So remember that you don't need an event venue because you're not bringing in crowds.
That changes the game when you think about that.
So that changes the game. You do need a hospital, although I would say. I mean, if you were a quick helicopter flight away to a hospital, now that's expensive as hell if you're going to be operating a helicopter back and forth. But that's no like the time frame it would take to get a fighter. If you could take a 5-minute helicopter ride versus a 5-minute
So you think like
ambulance ride.
Bahamas or something?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the now. Here's what we're going
I
to.
know there's a
I
lot
don't
of
know what
islands
that's
in the
what I'm saying.
Caribbean area.
I don't know what the laws are, but I'm thinking somewhere, yeah, kind of north / Central America ish.
Dana literally could call his old buddy Trump and be like, "Hey, that Navy hospital boat that just pulled out of New York's port, what's it doing? Can you pull that up to old Fight Island?" So I'm gonna stick with the one that I told you already that I thought was a possibility, but it's so far. It's so much farther than doing a Caribbean show, and that's Yaz Island or Yaz Island, which is in Abu Dhabi, where they just built an arena. They have this love affair with Abu Dhabi and the Arab Emirates and all the other sort of stuff over there. It's not far from international fighters over in that neck of the woods.
That is true. Now, see, that's the argument that I've heard, and I think that does make sense. Because initially, when I heard Fight Island, I didn't necessarily think Yaz Island, which is the one that already exists, but I thought somewhere over there. The UAE just makes sense. They have great relationships, and as you said, a lot of people point out that while it's a long way for us geographically, it's incredibly central for like. People from Europe, people from Asia, people from Russia, people from Australia, New Zealand.
We've seen plenty of cards. We've seen plenty of cards where it's been international based heavy and maybe one or two Americans. I think we take for granted that we just assume that it's going to be American after American after American. There's been plenty of cards when there's been maybe one token American on it. So a lot of these cards could be much more heavily based on international fighters,
pure international. So we may be on kind of a circuit for a little while, right? Yeah. Like it was U.S. versus U.S., international versus
especially
international.
if those can work those out to where, say, if the Apex is able to be the hub for the U.S. based fighters, with a little sprinkling of some international guys that are willing to come to the States for a while. All they need is something then that would take care of the international things and let it be sort of a real international. And that would definitely be closer to that area.
And this kind of brings up a point that I've been really thinking about lately, and we're seeing it right now. Where we're talking about how, listen, this card is coming together for May 30th. We may not even hear about it until May 27th.
So crazy.
It's crazy. And then June 6th is right behind it. And then June 13th, we already know there's fights being agreed to for June 13th, June 20th, June 27th. I think this is the time that fighters have got to be ready to seize opportunities, man. Because right now, the typical matchmaking structure, the typical matchmaking flow, it's not going to work. And I think, I don't know like necessarily names that I'm like, hey, they could really but there are going to be a handful of people, I think, during this stretch that really further their career because they handle this pandemic situation the right way, and they take. I think there's going to be atypical matchups. I think there's going to be fights that you didn't see coming, that you weren't expecting, but people seized opportunities, and I think that's going to be imperative for people to be able to kind of like try to capitalize on this time.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost at that point where I think before when it was how it was, most fighters be like, okay, it's been 3 or 4 months or so. I mean, most of them are all saying, I want to fight 3 times a year. Yeah. So most of them are probably in their brains are thinking, okay, I got 3 or 4 months, of where I'm going to be sort of staying sort of in shape, but knowing that I need to be ready to be peaking at a certain time frame. Now it's at the point where they're going to almost have to be within a sort of medium range of where they would be in a fight camp, knowing that they need to be able to peak at the optimum point at a much quicker time rate. So what that means for a lot of these fighters is this sucks is that because they don't get paid for this work time, is that they need to be closer to their game weight, their fight weight.
I agree.
Longer. So if that means a diet change or whatever, heaven forbid, don't everybody just go Tony Ferguson and just decide I'm going to be doing weight cuts nonstop until I get a fight. But getting to a point, and that might just be the thing. And this could be one of those catalysts where fighters are getting to the point where they're fighting closer to their normal weight, their natural weight. They're fighting near their weight instead of a weight class down where they're maybe the big guy or the big gal, the stronger guy, the stronger gal. They could take this fight if they know that they're willing to be closer, but they're going to be fighting it, which could be interesting because they could be fighting with different matchups if they're willing to go up a weight class. But you're right. I think the days of them knowing their schedules 8 or 9 months out are gone for right now until we get back, and I don't even see that happening until a vaccine is in place or something's in place where
least
we
a
can
tr-
sort
at
of
least
taking
a
it out of
treatment-
equipment.
At least a
you know,
treatment, if
equation.
not a vaccine.
Yeah.
At least a treatment, if not a vaccine. So I agree with you. That's why I think so. So let's bring up a matchup that fits all that mold exactly. John Jones, Francis Ngannou.
Yeah.
That fight, I actually think this might happen, man. So I am so intrigued by this fight, and I think it might actually happen. And I feel like this is one of those pandemic situations because right now we're in a situation where the heavyweight champion can't fight right now. Stipe Miocic just said, listen, man, first responder, gym's not open, give me some time. Now, I think by the fall he'll be ready to fight, but he's not ready to fight just yet. Francis Ngannou is the number one contender, no question about it. But even he says, hey, I defer to the trilogy. I understand that's DC's fight. So that's a problem. Then you got a problem at light heavyweight because you got 4 options at light heavyweight, right? And Jan Blachowicz, which I think is the one that people I've seen a lot of people support that one the most.
Yeah.
I mean, the Dominic Reyes rematch, obviously that's interesting. Maheta is deserved. He was kind of promised a rematch as well. Glover Teixeira with his late victory, he's kind of in the mix as well.
Yep.
But you got to look. Maheta's in Brazil. Blachowicz is in Poland. Now, Glover's here and Dominic is here, so you could make that fight. But, 2 of the guys that are deserving, they're out of the mix. They're out of the equation. So, I mean, there's
a losing streak.
That's it.
Well,
So they can't be here, So,
Yeah.
well, that's true, yeah. That's true. I didn't even think about it that way. I just meant the fact that
that they're not right here. Yeah.
It's true. Like
Jan's
up
like
a
pretty
win
much
first,
the only
man.
one that's.
It is funny, man. All right, so and I think Glover, man, I think it would be a stretch for Glover to leap all 3 of those guys. No disrespect to Glover. I mean, we know that the end of his career is coming, and he is on a nice run. That was an amazing performance. But to jump all 3 of those people would be a lot. So I'll be honest, man. I never thought. And look, if John Jones doesn't move up to heavyweight, I don't think he can be criticized. That's one thing that's always bugged me is like, John has to move up to heavyweight. John has to move up. I hate that. If you are a finely tuned athlete in your prime and that's your body weight and that's where you compete, like to say you have to go do something, I don't think you should have to.
Right.
But it sure as hell would be amazing. And now he's out there saying, maybe I'll just go for the title too. Maybe I'll take Francis and then I'll go on. And again, we talked about it, last week with Oscar. Pretty exciting to think about it. Like if for some reason DC did beat Stipe and John beat Ngannou, and then you had John versus DC,
for the
heavyweight. I mean, crazy. Now again, DC has said he's out after the next one, and I believe him. But I don't know. I'm just saying. I mean, I'm excited for this fight, and I feel like it might happen. I feel like
it could.
Normally, I would say, hey man, because John's been teasing this for so long. He's been teasing it for so long.
Yep.
And I never really felt like it was real, but I feel like now, I feel like it's more real this time. I feel like it's more real this time.
I agree with you. And Dana's always been one of those guys that he's always said, if you have 2 fighters asking for a fight, we're going to try to make that happen. And this isn't a big stretch. This isn't like, John Jones and Frankie Edgar have been going back and forth on Twitter, and he's like, they've both been chirping at it. I'm going to make it happen. Or Henry Cejudo's like, I'm going to take on, so-and-so. Like, let's be real. Like, this can actually happen. And the cool thing about the whole Francis and John and DC or whatever, DC, he won't shy or he's not scared from anybody. Will he fight Francis? Of course he will fight Francis. Yes. If John Jones, who has had Daniel's number at light heavyweight, makes the move up to heavyweight, and if John Jones is able to come in there and beat or destroy, even worse, destroy the scariest man as he's being billed right now, and come in there and just mash up on Ngannou, I would want to retire before fighting him again as well. Because that,
DC just had
because if DC can get Stipe and he gets that fight, should he get the title or whatever, if DC gets the title and John comes up there, of course he will do that fight against Jones because he knows he will get one last final.
So much money and you get a chance.
Paycheck.
Because I'm telling you right now, I don't care at all about seeing DC try to go back down to 205 and fight there. I already know how that plays out, and I know how hard it is for DC to get there.
Yep.
And I think that would be a horrible ending to his career. I just don't think it would go well, and that's not the way you want to see a legend like him go out. But at heavyweight, now again, you would hope John would be classy if he beat him anyway, but you can't trust John to be classy. But
I know that DC,
but at least
DC
at heavyweight,
DC would make the most of it, and I would know that DC would get a final real paycheck. Because let's be real, even if he fights Stipe for the belt. That's going to do good numbers, and he's going to get
big
paid.
fight, but it's not a.
But if he fights Jones again, the numbers just purely they're both on pay-per-views. One is going to eclipse the other.
They
one.
do both those guys on their own.
Yeah.
Do pretty good.
Yeah.
They do pretty good. When you put them together,
it's a freak of nature.
they do amazing.
It's unreal.
They do amazing.
I want to. It's funny because it just made me think. Because after we've been going through so many Jones and DC comments, or just watching all the footage, I want to one day have DC and sit him down and be like, "Remember that day, you and John, you lost at the MGM and you threw your shoe? Like, bro, that almost hit me. I knocked that shit down. I never brought it up because I was UFC staff at the time, but
that's right.
You know, I'm like, I want to show the footage. I'm like, DC, watch this. Remember when you lost your mind, you threw your shoe? Watch his hand come up here and knock that shoe down.
You just want an apology from DC?
No, I just want to be like, DC, I was so there in the moment. I just like, it could have been worse. Because I, as a staffer,
could have been really bad.
You know, one, I could have played it up or whatever. Because, I mean, I want to do this. I want to say this the right way. Some people played it up that night, that day, you know, because one, I knocked the shoe down and the shoe hit people. People played that shit up. That's all I'm going to go with. So it could have been worse if it wasn't a staffer that took the brunt of that,
right,
or took it in the head, took it in the face, because he blindly threw it in a moment of rage, threw that into a stage full of media members. And he got really effing lucky that the person that took the blunt of it was a staffer.
Oh, that could have been so bad. There could have been so many lawsuits that came out of that.
We maybe never would have ever got to see DC get to where DC is now if his career or something like that could have caused it to end at that point. Dude owes me at least $1 million, probably.
Hey,
that's what I'm getting to.
Just peel it off $1 million.
Just peel it off. You know, when you get that big last final paycheck, my hand still hurts.
Is it true? Is it true that your nerve damage on your legs started from
actually, the tumor in my back came from this shoe that got thrown years and years
I've heard that,
ago.
but I've heard that shoe contact can easily cause
I think it sent
tumors.
a shockwave or something through my spine or something, and whatever. But DC's the kind of dude that I know eventually, when you sit back and you look and you have those conversations, you look and your career's over, that you can laugh about shit. Because I think when he looks back at what this whole moment was with Jones, it was larger in life at the moment, but at some point it's just going to be ultimately funny. So regardless if they go up to heavyweight and have another fight and he gets another huge paycheck, but even if he loses, at some point he will still look back at this moment in time and still have fondness over it, because one, he made a life from these fights. I mean, he made a career, and the type of money and what he was able to do, the press he made, you know,
people always into a future career.
That's it. People always say there's no bad press is still good press, you know. So even though he was losing and Steve was dealing with all this other stuff, how his career has catapulted in a direction. And some people, when you want to get weird about it, so you got two gentlemen, one won every time, one lost every time. One is shot so far up, he's doing commentary and doing this other one. The other guy, poor guy, is done with legal issues. He's been arrested.
It's crazy.
He's had all kinds of other shit, and you would think in some other situations in life it would have been a flipped script.
Yeah.
The person that lost could have just downward spiraled.
That's wild
and did
to think
whatever.
about, right? You think the victories didn't necessarily bring everything with
it. Victories didn't do it. DC being DC and doing the right things, saying the right things, and just giving us those moments.
Yeah.
Has just catapulted himself. So I think they'll get to the point, even if it goes to heavyweight, I'm not going to feel sad if he loses. I will be sad maybe that night.
Yeah.
Because I know he will initially feel that was the last time he's going to have that battle.
One more shot and one more big paycheck.
One more huge paycheck, and his kids are going to go to college nice and happy. He's going to maybe have another extension on his house. He built that gym in his garage. Like he has things in the right place for him. So I mean, everything is sort of worked out. So if he's able to get that, regardless if it's a win or not, he's going to be happy. Like it'd be, I guess, the same thing for us normal folk. Imagine if you were able to work a job. We're going to pay you an insanely amount of money. It might be a little embarrassing at the end, and at some point the job's going to end. But if you know that you're set for a little bit after it, isn't it okay? I think it would
I think
be
you put
okay.
yourself through it. I think you put
Yeah.
yourself through it. All right, listen. I should say, by the way, if you like this type of well thought out, in depth analysis and blackmailing of UFC greatness, you know, a little
I would
bit,
never actually do that.
a little bit of a
But-
shakedown. If you're a fan of a shakedown of UFC fighters of trying to just reach out for $1 million because of a random shoe,
Is that too much? Is it too much?
$1 million's a lot. But I mean, hey,
What's
shoot
a
your
good
shot,
price
dog.
point? What's
shoot your shot. See what happens. I mean, maybe you could buy you like a dinner or something. Or
All right, I would settle for a dinner.
So you started $1 million, you'll settle for a
Hey,
dinner.
I'm a poor negotiator.
All right. Well, listen. If you like poor negotiation tactics, make sure that you log into wherever you listen to it, whether it be Apple Podcasts or wherever else, Spotify, which is now the home of Joe Rogan. Man,
Hey, Spotify, we got a podcast.
you know what I'm saying? Like, let's talk. Let's talk.
You got any of those leftover millions lying around?
I mean,
I'm
we
trying to
don't-
blackmail people over here.
We don't
Just
need
throw us one.
We don't need 100. I'll tell you what. Spotify, you pay us $1 million, we'll leave DC alone. How about that?
That's it.
We won't try to
Do
shake down
DC
DC.
a square.
Do
He
DC a
deserves
favor.
it.
Make sure that you are subscribed. Make sure that you, if you can, we'd appreciate a rating. You know, if you can give it 5 stars, wherever it may be.
We'd much
help
more
us out.
appreciate the $1 million.
We'd
but-
appreciate $1 million. We'd appreciate any feedback you could leave. I'd be happy to any feedback. We always appreciate that. Or if you want to step your game up to another level, take it to patreon.com/the MMA Roadshow. Join us over there where we got the exclusive home of the and a half edition. So we'll have those bonus contents for you. And shout out to some of the big ballers that joined last week. Rich,
Yeah,
David,
Rich.
they came in at that high level, bro. I appreciate that. That means a lot. But Yorgos, Desru, Pamela Curry, Jeff Lane, even Oscar Willis just wanted to
Dude,
hear himself.
Oscar Willis wanted
He
to hear
logged in.
himself.
Yeah, he logged in so he could hear himself. I wouldn't give him the audio file, so he's like, well, I guess I got to pay to hear myself. So shout out to Oscar Willis. We would appreciate that. All right, couple other kind of matchmaking things. Bantamweight. I want to ask you about bantamweight. Ali Abdelaziz came out and told TMZ that Henry Cejudo will probably fight again this summer. Look, not surprised if it does happen. I still stand by the fact.
he's retired.
I still stand by
He's
the
retired.
fact that he might not fight. I do stand by the fact that he might not fight. Again, I saw the emotion of Eric Albarracin, the tears, that sort of thing. I think it could potentially still be a real thing. But it wouldn't shock me if he does. So here's what I want to ask, because it's weird right now. So June 13th, right now, it's supposed to be Peter Yan versus Marlon Moraes, and I love that fight. But I tell you what, I mean, if you're going to have a title fight, and it's going to be Henry Cejudo defending his belt, I feel like Aljamain Sterling has to be in there. But Aljamain Sterling's fighting Corey Sandhagen. That just got signed. Yeah. I mean, Peter Yan versus Cejudo I wouldn't hate, but I feel like Sterling deserves it more. If Cejudo's away, I want to see Aljamain and Yan, and I want to see Moraes and Sandhagen. Let's break up those fights a little bit.
Yeah.
And
Those are
again,
good.
this is going back to that right now you got to be ready. You got to be fluid. You got to be ready to capitalize. You got to be ready to be jump at a moment's notice. So I don't know. I guess I just want to get a feel from you because I was there, and I feel like Cejudo's retirement was earnest, but it would not shock me if he rescinded. I mean, he said that night for the right amount of money. I think he's content. I think he's okay with walking away. But if he can get the right amount of money and the right fight, then I think he would come back. But again, these matchups have been announced and everything's changing, and I like the matchups the way they are. But again, I mean, I feel like they're not necessarily set up in the right way. I feel like Aljamain is the number one contender, basically, is I guess what I'm saying. I feel like I know he couldn't fight for a little bit, and he said that, but he needs to be there. And I'm just trying to figure out the right way to shake all this stuff out.
While I think that Henry is an incredible fighter and how it would be very cool if he did step back, I just don't see the UFC wanting to be like, oh, thank goodness, Henry, you're coming back. Let us give you this enormous amount of pay raise or whatever. I just don't see that happen. What I'd rather see in the meantime,
Like, hey, this is Connor's deal. If you want to sign that,
you want to sign this,
if
it's all good.
We'll just give you Connor's deal.
I mean, I like Henry and I like what he brings to it. And as much as some stuff is
I love
cringy,
him.
I absolutely love it. I think
He's such a great dude.
incredible.
Behind the scenes, he's such a
He's
great
a super
dude,
nice
man.
dude, and even his team. I mean, like the whole team is very, very nice. I mean, they're all good people. I would love for him to be able to get a paycheck, a big paycheck, or even bigger paycheck. I just don't see. And this might sound the wrong way because I just got done praising. I'm like, I don't miss it. I'm not willing to want to be like, if they came to me and said, all right, are you willing to pay an extra $1 to give him what he wants? I would almost.
Oh, so you wouldn't go from 65 to 66?
Well,
I mean, DC's going to give you $1 million.
well, if DC gave me $1 million, I'll go to 70 for you.
All right.
What I'd almost
If
rather
DC or
see,
Spotify will give us $1 million.
I would gladly pay $4 extra. I would rather almost see a 4-man tournament where they can sort of build it up a little bit and create a little something extra to kind of inject a little bit of energy, because I think these tournament things have been sort of working for other organizations, because it's all a bit sloppy and it's all a bit sort of weird with who wants to be the number one contender and who should we put them up. If you do something along the lines of maybe a 4, maybe even a 6-man, if you want to make it like a more of a tournament, open it up a little bit more, maybe 8 people. But I think you could probably do something short, kind of like even when they first put the flyweight together. I think there were 4 people.
There were 4 to start with. I kind of like where you're going with this. I hadn't really thought about that because in my head I thought, look, if Cejudo's out, we need to break up these matchups. We need Aljamain and Jan for the title. That should be the title, and then we need Marias and Sandhagen for a number 1 contender fight.
Yeah.
But if it is going to be, like you're saying, kind of a 4-man tournament,
it sort of works itself out.
Then it works itself out the other way. Then at that point, I like Jan Marias and Aljamain Sandhagen. So you know what? It's an interesting point you make because
and it'll be a heck of a lot more exciting than.
I don't know. I was just gonna say that it sounds weird for me to say this because I'm a big Henry Cejudo fan too. I love the cringe.
I love the dude, but I mean, like, if I know that I could get like this tournament, like what I've loved about Bellator, some of these tournaments that they've had lately have been so exciting to watch those fight nights and to watch it build up. I mean, like. There's even been some days where, I think you called me crazy one day because I was like, I'm more excited to see this featherweight sort of tourney sort of play out on a Bellator card when there was a UFC card the same night, just because there were stakes. There were real stakes at hand. If Henry can come back and get what he needs to get, great. But I'm so happy for him that he's able to get the money that he's got and he left on top. I guess I'm at the point I don't miss him yet. So it doesn't bother me that the division moves on.
Right.
So what I'm thinking about is what I think I would want to see that would be very, very exciting and kind of kickstart the whole thing.
It'd be fun.
It'd be so awesome, and then they could sell it out and they could put their spin on it. We've seen what other organizations have done with little sort of mini tournaments, and even with how the UFC dealt with the flyweight division when it started, it would be a heck of a lot different, I think, now. If they would approach and try to bring multiple people into a set sort of tournament format or, something, even if it's a round robin or something, just to where it would, work out and give them another opportunity to promote something. I would almost rather see that because I would be more excited to see the possible matchups out of the top players instead of just like, I don't know, guys talking shit just to get that chance to fight the number 1 guy or something. I don't know, but I mean, if Henry came back, great, awesome. But if he stays away, I'm happy for him as well.
That division's fun, man. There's some good names there. All right, listen, we talked about patreon.com/MMA Over there, you can ask us questions. I mean, especially if you're at some of those higher tiers, man. We got you covered. Like we'll build this. We'll build this damn thing around you. That's what we'll do. We'll let you direct the show. So I want to ask you a couple questions. Brent Barnett, our good friend Brent Barnett, he said, "Hey John, with Dana seemingly reluctant to book Conor without an audience, to capitalize on the gate, do you think the UFC would ever consider selling limited tickets to the uber wealthy at exorbitant prices to make his fight a big money event? Especially if this was to happen on Fight Island, this really would have a Hollywood feel to it. Not sure how likely this could be, but it would certainly be interesting." At first I was like, I hadn't really thought about that. But I will say this. I do know that Dana had a couple of friends in the audience at the events.
Certainly did.
And so, we saw a couple, right, on social media, that sort of thing. JR was there. So, I mean, there are a couple of opportunities to do that. Now.
But he was credentialed as media, wasn't he?
I don't think he wasn't sitting with us.
Really?
I don't think so.
So it's legit. That's just
slap
in the face of everything they've been saying.
Come on, no, I don't think that. I mean, they have.
But
they only,
it is.
They only had a certain number of people. I mean, they had numbers and limits.
But I'm sure they didn't when they laid it out. When they put to the commissions and stuff, they said, "Oh, we're going to do this and make sure the staff and the media is all. We're going to limit this, and we're going to have." Some fans.
That's a fair. You know what? That's actually
that
an interesting
is a
point.
fan. If they weren't there in some sort, I just assumed they were gaming the system and called them a media. That, if nothing else, that is a fan. How do you say that that's an event without a fan?
That's interesting. Okay, so now you're an interesting point here, and this goes straight into Brent's question. I mean, that's an interesting. Well, I hadn't thought about that. I mean, I would assume that if I mean I didn't ask, but I would assume that JR was tested. I mean, I would assume.
Oh yeah, I would assume he would. If not, then you're really, really messing with it.
Yeah.
I mean,
you're just saying that they were like kind of non-essential people or whatever.
It's a non-essential person.
Okay, I get you.
You know,
all right. So
which is one thing. I mean, I would get if he's not tested, then you're really putting a slap in the system. But if he's there, but it's just hard for you to say, okay, we did this event without fans. But oh no, we had an influential person that actually is there that was just as a fan.
That's good. Cause see, so I was gonna say at the Apex, I think we talked about it when we first toured the facility, but we haven't really talked about it much. 'Cause I don't think it's been in much use. But they do have a VIP suite in there, like it's up in the corner.
We did a press.
We did a press
thing in there. I don't think it's ever been used.
No,
since.
I don't think it's been used. So it's there is a full bar in there.
Yeah. I was fighting for that to be the media room. That didn't work out.
That didn't work out. So it's inside the arena where the octagon is. It's in the if you're walking in, it's in the back corner on the upper left hand side, and it's got an amazing view of the cage. Man, it's just obviously it's a small building and you're elevated, so it's got a perfect view. Like I said, it's got a full bar in there. It's got some couches, some chairs, some monitors, and all that stuff.
It's a nice room,
dude. So honestly, yeah, it could. They could sell there now. Fight Island. Again, Fight Island is guessing from my point of view because we don't know what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
But they could sell tickets. But you brought up a point that I hadn't, to be honest with you, I hadn't thought about. That is, man, if you are selling tickets, even if it's 10 tickets or whatever, because think about that, man. Boy, that is such a great point. How much would uber wealthy people pay to be one of 20 people inside the arena for a Conor McGregor fight? Because that is going to be. That's been the thing I've been seeing all along. Like the fights themselves, they're not that different. Like once the things get going, there's a little bit of difference. But yeah, like a Conor McGregor fight without the big audience and without the big walk-in and the flags waving and the volume and everything, it's going to be nuts. But yeah, man, people pay, I imagine, a hefty sum for that to get in there. But if it's at the violation of orders or whatever, I think that's something that would have to be disclosed to the commission.
Well, that's the kind of thing. I feel like you get in that sort of whole like, we're playing by the rules. But oh, by the way, one of these people that really shouldn't be in here is posting on social media that they're here in the building.
And they'd have to be. Boy, man, I hadn't even thought about it. They'd have to come in a day early, which I'm sure if they're paying money,
I bet you could reach out to.
They'd have to be tested. They'd have to be. Yeah,
I bet we could easily. Somebody could reach out to Jared and be like, "Were you tested?" And if he wasn't, that would be really, really shady.
That really would.
If anything, I'd be like, "Bro, tell me you were tested and do whatever."
I hadn't thought about that.
But that's just one of those things. Like at the point, I thought they were bringing him in as media because I know he's done some broadcasting
knowing as strict as everything was, I just assumed. But you're right. Probably should clarify.
I would think that he was tested, but it's worth looking into. Not that it's already a done deal. It's not like it's like, oh, this is whatever. We're not getting reports or hearing that JR is sick or whatever. But still, just the whole fact of that, the whole premise has been that these events are happening without fans present. That's not true. Fans were present. You see him there in some random pictures from here or there, So it just wonders. It just makes you wonder.
Are those people following the same protocol?
Are they following the same protocol? Are they being put under the same scrutiny? Are they willing to say like?
That's a good question. That's a real question.
If Hugh Jackman or somebody, if Halle Berry, God bless her, I absolutely love Halle Berry, but if Halle Berry's like, hey, I'm going to come tonight, is Dana going to be like, I trust you're good, or is he going to be like, let me stick this fucking swab 6 inches into your brain?
You have to. You have to. You
assume?
You have to.
You assume?
See, that's a good question, man. That's actually a fair question versus some of the other dumb stuff I've seen with people. I don't even get into it, man.
I like JR. I thought it was pretty cool, though. I thought it was interesting to see him, and I was like, wait, this is the wrestling guy, right?
Yeah, it's funny. Everybody was excited. I had to admit, like, look, I know the name.
Don't really know.
I don't know.
But it's funny because like if you ever watch one episode of wrestling, you'll hear his voice and you're like,
of course.
Oh,
I know the voice because I've heard like
the
clips on social media and that sort of stuff. I know
such unique. It's his voice is like what your voice would be, where somebody's like, oh, I know that voice.
Exactly who it is.
If somebody hears his voice, be like, oh, I know whose voice this is.
Yeah, and obviously I know his influence in the community, but I just don't know it real well. But maybe, dude. Now that I think about it, like maybe he was media. Like I was in the press room most of the time. Maybe
I thought he was
at our table.
sitting at the media table.
We had media tables.
There were like 8
of them.
in front of what do you call that? The where I forget what they call
Then
it.
maybe he
the
was
hockey
media.
things. I assume he was media because he was in where media would be.
That's interesting.
Which that I would get. He is a broadcast personnel, so I'm sure there could have been something where, and I'm sure he could have used his social platform to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
So I just assumed he was a media person. So I have no beef with that at all. If he was there and he did something to cover or talk about in his thing, he was media. I mean, that's not a big stretch for me. A stretch for me would be, like I said, Hugh Jackman. Hugh Jackman sitting there, calling him a media person is a huge stretch.
Right.
JR, while people might, joke and say, "Oh, whatever," he does have a huge social platform that he can actually still.
So what if
sort
it's
do
one of
stuff,
the what if it's one of the quote unquote like celebrity owners, right, that have a percentage?
That's certainly
Should
not
they
media.
be able to? No, but should they be able to show up?
Well, I mean, if they're helping to run the company, I guess you could, in your own mind, call them essential staff. If you're helping pay the bills,
Right.
that's essential staff.
I mean, like if Anthony Kiedis is cage side or whatever.
It depends on how they hit.
Don't be against the Chili Peppers, dog.
I love the Chili Peppers. I mean, but
Hugh Jackman, he's not even from here. He shouldn't be here.
I mean, that's a tough one because you'd have to think of like Anthony brings nothing to the equation. But I could see if somebody was a majority investor or was actually part of the organization in some sort of form, they could justify.
Yeah, if
why
they had a
he
big
is
stake,
there.
if they had a controlling
they
stake,
could justify
not
why.
a point.
Yeah, I mean, that's tough because then if not, then it's tough for you to sort of go to bat and say we followed all the rules. But oh yeah, by the way, we let a couple good old boys in.
Boy, that's
so.
good. That'll be something worth following. I definitely will pay attention to that. All right, unintended result there from Brent, but definitely now I realize I need to pay attention to that stuff at the next events. All right, on another note, he had another question. On another note, I was wondering if you had any news on Thomas Almeida. I know he hit a bit of a rough patch in his last outings, but it's been almost 2.5 years. Would love to see the shoot box rep back in action. And then he said, appreciate the coverage during these pandemic times. So that was nice of him.
I did like everybody giving him the shout out for the coverage. You guys deserve it. You guys went down there and you guys did the deed. So
appreciate that.
I appreciate that people were reaching out. And
it was cool to see, man. We did the best we could. I know that we didn't please everybody, but we did the best we could.
I mean, you had to go hot tea. There was no coffee around.
There was no coffee around, but we did the best we could. I will say this, and I will have to publicly admit, I do not have a subscription to The Athletic. But I believe it was Fernando Pratchis, I'm assuming, because I saw there was a headline on Thomas Almeida a couple weeks back. So I think they did a big update piece on Thomas Almeida. I just didn't read it because I don't have a subscription.
I don't have a subscription
so
either.
I apologize. I'm just going to be honest. But if you want to go check it out at The Athletic, go check it out at The Athletic. All right, last thing, I guess.
They're probably still offering deals to get up.
I'm sure they are. Yeah,
especially
sure
now, everybody's offering deals for everything under the sun, so you probably could get something right now.
So there you go. All right, quick mention real quick. Habib Nurmagomedov, his father obviously gravely ill right now. I mean, obviously that's the most important aspect of that is the public. As far as the public is concerned, is this man dealing with his father and his mentor and his coach and all that. But I guess just from the logistics side of it, I will say I'm not too. I guess what's the right word? I don't know that September is going to happen, man. If something happens with his father, and you're talking about Habib and Gaethje in September, I don't know, man. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, unless something gets better, it would be ill-advised to try to plan for anything. I mean, you could hope for the best or whatever, but I mean, this is real life stuff going on. I mean, if you're not sure that they're on the mend or even out of ICUs or intensive care, if they're not trending in a certain direction, it's way too early to say anything.
Yeah.
And didn't he have other losses within his family?
Yeah. So there's.
He's dealing with a lot of shit right now. If I was him, just take the damn year off.
I guess that's why I want to throw out there just
back,
cautionary, man. Because I've a lot of people are asking, what's next to lightweight? What's going to happen in lightweight? Man, until that's cleared up, I think lightweight's on hold right now. At least the unified title.
The unified title.
And you can't strip him. You can't strip him. I mean, I guess you can, but come on.
There's already an interim out there. Just let that stuff work its way out.
It.
But just don't expect the fact that he's going to be doing anything anytime soon. I wouldn't expect him. I think any sane person, knowing that what somebody's going through, this is not a guy that's just like, oh, I'll get back to you. He's dealing with real life shit. with real life ramification. You only get one dad. I mean, some of you are maybe lucky enough to have a stepdad, or somebody that steps in to be your second dad, but you get that one dad. So I mean, let the man deal with his family shit, and you just got to realize this is still just entertainment. This is real life shit that will alter or change an individual dealing with this sort of stuff. So if he needs the rest of the year to do it, that's fine. Just let the interim title bounce around. Let it do its thing. I mean, not saying that Justin will lose it and it'll bounce around, but I'm just saying,
Yep.
There, in my mind, I knowing what he's dealing with, I'm not expecting or pushing him to do anything, because he's dealing with real stuff that,
It's interesting because even in my head, I'm thinking about it like I am not in favor of support of stripping Habib at all. I'm not in favor of stripping Stipe, but I feel like I'd be a little bit more understandable. Like if the UFC said, "Hey, we got to move forward." Like Stipe says he can't fight right now. I know he's a first responder. I don't want to take away from what that means.
Yep.
But I don't know, man. I feel like dealing with like the death of your father and coach, if that happens, God, I shouldn't even say, knock on wood. I'm not. But I'm saying, like, I mean, that's where it feels like it's trending. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if that happens, I don't know, man. I just feel like that deserves a little time. I don't know. Maybe that's hypocritical of me, to be honest with you. But I feel like that deserves a little bit more slack.
I can see it, and I mean, and part of it too. One, I mean, sometimes a person's calling and their desire and action to help others, there's nothing you can do about it. It's not even a choice. For some people, it's so ingrained, like that is the only decision in their mind, and there's nothing that you're going to do to stop them. And Stipe has that calling inside of him to want to help people. He decided to become a firefighter as well as still maintain this. He's still doing this fighting thing off to the side as well. But in his mind, I mean, like, the fighting is off to the side. Like, firefighting and helping others is on the forefront of his mind. But the difference between a choice being made for you about wanting to do this occupation and wanting to help somebody, and a choice between knowing that you might possibly lose a loved one without your choice, without whatever, life's just thrown in front of you. It's two different things in my mind. One is a choice, and one is you just got to deal with the ramifications of life throwing something at you, and with no control. Which I guess is kind of back ways.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's such a weird argument. Both sides.
He has his calling, and he wants to do it, and he feels in his mind that is what he has to do. But it's not like there's no choice when it comes to being a son and being there for your loved one when they're fighting an illness. That's not a choice. That's just human nature, and that's just what you're supposed to do as a human being. Stipe, if he wanted to, could step away. He could walk away. There are other. It's not like Cleveland and all this other stuff has no firefighters,
right,
has no people to fill that gap. He will put more of a strain on his brothers by stepping away, but there are still people that would fill that void.
No, but you know what? As I compare him, like, now I'm thinking, like, I've said, like, I think it's okay if they strip. I would prefer an interim title. If for whatever reason they got to move forward, I would prefer an interim title.
Of course.
But now, as I compare the two situations, I know they're completely different. But maybe it's not okay that they strip him. Maybe it's, I don't know, man. I'll be honest.
I'd rather an interim. I mean, I don't.
An interim.
I hate the stripping. The whole stripping
would be totally understandable, right?
Yeah.
You're like, hey, man, he's busy doing this. We don't want to take it away from him. We're doing an interim title. You can't get mad at that.
It's not like he's just deciding, guys, sorry, I have a contract. You have to give me so many amounts of fights, but I'm allowed to disagree with fights, and I can choose when I'm not going to fight. You can't force me to fight somebody. It's different than saying, I'm out here trying to save lives in one of the worst epidemics we've seen since, like, the plague, or Ebola and SARS and all this other shit. Like, this is real life stuff. You would be really, really shitty to take away somebody's hard-earned accolades just because you need to push pay-per-view buys. If you need to push, just do an interim. You don't need to strip the guy. I mean,
I agree.
He's not ducking. He's not running away. The guy's handling some real life stuff that is slowly trending in the right direction. So if you have to have a belt or a title fight for some particular reason because you're afraid that you can't sell pay-per-views without having a title, then make it an interim. You don't need to strip somebody because it doesn't fit your marketing plans. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It just cheapens the fact of what that person has worked for, which is why we all felt shitty too when Tony had the interim title before and they just stripped it away. And,
Oh yeah.
that was the literally shittiest thing that just made it seem so bad when it was like, okay, you feel the need to create an interim belt because you're having a pay-per-view, but then you're just going to turn right around and just take it away for no reason.
It's not right.
It was the worst.
It's not right.
It was the worst. And I remember a lot of people thinking at the time, they're like, oh, the UFC will never recover from this. This was the shittiest thing. And nobody even thinks about it anymore.
Nope.
It happened so long ago. You don't even remember.
Well, they did the same thing to Colby Covington. I'm sure everybody wants to.
Lord.
Wants to step up and
so
defend
easy
Colby
to
Covington.
forget it. It's so easy.
I think about all the people that think how it's unfair that Colby Covington doesn't have a UFC title because of what the UFC did to him. And I think about that all the time. How people are just outraged that they did Colby Covington like that.
It happens every day. Everybody's like, if there was an individual in life that needed to have a title and that has done all the right things, it is Colby.
Too funny. All right, well, listen, good to be back with Cold Coffee. We'll be back together next week. He will not be officially working at MMA Junkie, but, we'll still get together and have a few frosty beverages and talk about everything.
Probably finish some of the drinks that you brought over. I am stacked at the household. If Agent H doesn't finish them off, we should still be stacked, but you can still bring another
I'll bring
case.
another case anyway. That's just to be safe. Better safe than sorry, I say.
I mean, maybe Anthony has something new that he's working on there at the old Latchkey, and he wants to send something.
Send it on over. Shout out to Latchkey Brewing. We'll find out what's up. We'll let that all play out. We'll definitely have more information, obviously. Maybe we'll have a full card announced. Maybe by next Thursday we'll know what the full card is for Saturday.
So crazy.
We'll find out. It is wild times, but we appreciate you sticking with us. Thanks for listening.